Marco Island residents get ready for the worst and hope for the best. It took this man 3 hours to prepare his home for the possible onslaught of Hurricane George. This is the new temporary home of the Coast Guard's Crisis Center. The center was located in Miami, but the Coast Guard made the decision to relocate in case South Florida was hit. The team will monitor all Coast Guard resources along the Atlantic. Even the Space Shuttle Atlantis beat a hasty retreat on the back of a Boeing 747. It is seen here flying over Nashville en route to Fort Campbell, Kentucky to ride out the hurricane. Good evening. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Sharon Resulton.
And I'm Terry Smith. We're tracking the path of Hurricane George. The storm has left nearly 200 people dead in the Caribbean. Tonight, concerns surround those who did not heed evacuation orders in the Florida Keys. Several of the islands are only 7 feet above sea level, presenting a dangerous situation for those who decide to ride out the hurricane. Jeff Morrow is in the Forecast Center with the latest.
That's right, Terry. It is a very dangerous situation, particularly in the Keys, as we have a rapidly developing hurricane now that the center has gotten off land. And we really have been expecting this to happen ever since this hurricane moved into Cuba. We knew that once it moved back out over the open waters, the upper level pattern was such that everything was in place for rapid intensification, and that is exactly what is happening right now. We'll show you all the details in just a moment as far as the radar and the satellite, but let's give you the very latest current conditions on the 8 p.m. intermediate advisory. 22.9 north, 79 west, centering the hurricane 205 miles southeast of Key West. Those winds have come up to 85 miles per hour, maximum sustained, moving west-northwest at 14, and the pressure has dropped down to 987 millibars. Now, there are hurricane warnings out for eastern Cuba, central Bahamas, the northwest Bahamas, and South Florida from Bonita Beach on the west coast south to the Keys, and up the east coast all the way to Deerfield Beach. From there to Stewart, Florida, and on the west coast from Bonita Beach up to Longboat Key, there are hurricane watches in effect. We have another graphic which we can show you that shows it even more closely here. Again, there are mandatory evacuations obviously out for the Keys, but if you haven't left by now, you cannot leave. That road has been basically closed, and we understand there are still a lot of people, perhaps half the local population, still out there on the Keys, and they are in for one very rough ride, that is for sure. We also have 2 Weather Channel crews standing by. One is located in Naples, Florida, and the other is located in Key Biscayne, just east of Miami. We're going to start, though, in Naples, Florida with Bill Keneally. And Bill, haven't seen any of the squalls coming through your area quite yet, have you?
No, we have not, Jeff. We have seen periodically some lightning off to our east and also to our south, but yes, we've not had any rain officially here at the site. It is actually a nice night. If you have to get out there and get to the shelter, by all means do so. Take advantage of that opportunity now. The weather will be deteriorating here after the midnight hour, we presume, as squalls and maybe some tropical storm force winds come in. As I understand it, there are about 9,000 spaces open at the shelters in Collier County. There are 5 shelters, primarily at the high schools as well as some of the middle schools. If you are heading out there, though, they will feed you, but bring snacks, bring water, and by all means, bring your bedding. They will not be supplying bedding. They will put a roof over your head, and they will keep you warm and dry. They promise that. But, Jeff, again, things are quiet out here now. A northeast wind blowing 10 to 15 miles per hour. Starting about 10 blocks south of here, there is a mandatory evacuation. And the problem with that northeast wind will be down in this area, as we do have a high tide coming in around 2:30 in the morning. Not on the Gulf side, but on the Gordon River side and also emptying out into Naples Bay. That will be our first critical high tide. Then the next high tide, mid-afternoon tomorrow, that'll be critical for all waterfront areas. Let's get a feel for what's happening a little closer to the center of Hurricane George. And with that, we'll turn it back to Jim Cantori in Key Biscayne. Good evening, Jim.
Good evening, Bill. Again, over here, just like you're dealing with, shelters are open. There's 13 of them in Dade County, and they are for people in mobile homes. These are the areas that we have the mandatory evacuations underway tonight. Just got some new information off the radio station. They were talking about the Fort Lauderdale Airport tonight closing at 9 p.m. and Miami International will close around midnight if they have 55-mile-per-hour winds or greater. You can see the sailboats here in the marina, which is right by the Rusty Pelican as you look across the bay toward downtown Miami. Again, really a beautiful night here with the exception of the wind. And as we look off toward the causeway, which takes you back to the mainland, you can see very little traffic moving across tonight. So most folks are just kind of hankering down and getting ready for this thing. Just got a traffic report. If you are planning on heading out of Dade and Broward counties, the traffic is flowing very, very well on the major thoroughfares tonight. So some great information if you've got to get out and do any last-minute preparations. But other than that, Jeff, we're just waiting on yet another rain band, which you can tell us when we're going to deal with. Back to you.
And I think it's going to be very soon, Jim. As a matter of fact, a tornado warning just out for Monroe County in the Upper Keys. So things deteriorating there as another big squall band goes through. Joining me now here in the Forecast Center is our hurricane expert, John Hope. And John, tornado warning just came out down toward the Key Largo area, but that's something we may see more of.
Yeah, there's going to be a few of those. Usually have that when we have landfalling hurricanes.
All right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at a satellite perspective. And what we can see here, John, which really amazes me, is how fast this deeper red and orange is starting to wrap around that eye.
Well, what that shows is, Jeff, that the system is getting better organized, and we've seen that to begin to happen just as soon as the eye got back out over water. That's all it had to wait for, because it had all the factors were in place for this to get stronger, except the center was over land. As soon as it got back out over the water, it's ready to go.
All right, now we can talk a little bit about the immediate track. These are the Florida Keys right here, Key West being out here. Here's our center. Where do you think it's going to be tracking from this point?
Well, it's going to track right up here, Jeff, in the general direction of the Florida Keys, off the west coast of Florida, we do believe. So right into the Keys, whether it goes right over Key West or a little bit to the east of there, it's not quite possible to determine that yet.
All right, and here's a Doppler radar. And John, on the very long range of this Doppler out of Key West, we can actually see the eye, a very broad eye at this point.
And this corresponds with everything else we're looking at. That tells us the circular nature of it tells us the eye is very well formed. And we don't see down here on the other side of the eye too well yet because it's a little bit too far away.
And that may actually be where some of the strongest winds are occurring from what we understand.
Very possibly.
All right. Here's the close-up radar, John. And again, here's Jim Cantor located right here at Key Biscayne, east of where the Miami airport is. Looks like he's going to be getting this squall band coming through. And it's this band as it's headed in toward Key Largo that has the tornado warning.
And these are feeder bands, Jeff, that are a couple hundred miles out from the center of the hurricane. They're well apart from the center of the hurricane.
Okay, as a matter of fact, we have some video we can show you that was shot a little bit earlier today. This is in Duck Key, Florida, when one of the first squall bands moved through, and you can see the palm trees getting blown around here and some brief heavy rain. We had reports of winds gusting in the Keys with this particular band of about 50 to 55 miles per hour. But folks, this is just the preliminaries. That's only the very first band that just went through. Another one is about ready to come through. And again, a lot of this is going to come through during the overnight hours.
And pounding that area. And we're going to not only find that, but the big impact of the wind as well. And the storm surge, which we think will be quite high, and especially along the Keys as that continues to track to the west-northwest. More on George when we to Miami, Florida. You can see if you look closely enough, there's one that moves on through, the second one impacting the area right now and heading into Dade County, a tornado warning in effect. Oftentimes when you get a hurricane that comes very close or makes landfall, it can cause a lot of severe weather as well. And a tornado warning in effect as you head on into Dade County. It's a Doppler radar indicated tornado, but do be on the lookout for some severe weather. Very heavy rain and winds are going to continue to brush along this same area as we head toward the Keys in South Florida. Again, conditions are only going to worsen from this point on. If you look closely enough, you can actually see there's the center of circulation as the center emerges over warm open waters once again. We think that will continue to track to the west-northwest. And if you want to find out more about George, please tune in at the top of the hour. We actually have a crew stationed in Miami, our own Jim Cantori around Key Biscayne, and he can give you a first-hand account of what it's like as that squall line moves on through. Let's see what else is on. Hurricane George has begun its assault on the Florida Keys. These are some of the first pictures we have of rain and wind moving into what's called Duck Key. Good evening. Welcome to Weather Center. I'm Sharon Resulton.
And I'm Dan Atkinson. We're tracking the path of Hurricane George. The storm has already left nearly 200 people dead in the Caribbean. Marco Island residents got ready for the worst and are hoping for the best. It took some people 3 hours to prepare their homes for the possible onslaught of Hurricane George. This is the new temporary home of the Coast Guard's Crisis Center. The center was located in Miami, but the Coast Guard made the decision to relocate in case South Florida was hit. The team will monitor all Coast Guard resources along the Atlantic. Even the Space Shuttle Atlantis beat a hasty retreat on the back of a Boeing 747. It's seen here flying over Nashville en route to Fort Campbell, Kentucky to ride out the hurricane. Jeff Morrow is in the Forecast Center with more.
All right, thanks, Dan and Sharon. Things pretty nasty going on south of the Keys right now, and some pretty nasty squalls. The outer squall bands are now starting to move through parts of South Florida, and one of the byproducts of that squally weather is possible tornadoes. We've already seen tornado warnings come out for Monroe County and for southern Dade County, and now for northern Dade County until 10:40. Doppler radar indicating a developing tornado near Bell Harbor. Storm was moving west at 40 miles per hour. These squalls are moving from east to west off the Atlantic. Some of the cities or portions of Miami that might be affected: North Miami Beach, Carroll City, and Opelika. So again, just one of the byproducts. Again, this is night. You're probably not going to have very much warning at all if one of these systems, one of these tornadoes spalled by these squall lines comes through your area. So be ever vigilant. Let's go ahead and show you exactly where the center of the hurricane is. And the center of the hurricane is still well a ways from South Florida by some 200 miles or so southeast of Key West. Centered as of the 8 p.m. advisory at 22,979. Winds at 85 miles per hour. That is up a bit. West-northwest moving at 14. And we've seen the pressure drop somewhat down to 987 millibars. We have hurricane warnings out for South Florida from Bonita Beach on the west coast and Deerfield Beach on the east coast, all the way down through the Keys. Also for eastern Cuba, the central Bahamas, and the northwest Bahamas. Here's a little bit of a closer look at those watches and warnings. Again, anywhere south of Longboat Key down to about Bonita Beach, that's where you have a hurricane watch on the west coast. And from Stewart, Florida, down to Deerfield Beach, you have watches on the east coast. Anywhere south of there under hurricane warnings at the present time. Now, on the east coast and the west coast, we have Weather Channel live crews. On the west coast, we have Bill Keneally, who's at Naples, Florida. And on the east coast, we have Jim Cantore, who just went through a big squall in Key Biscayne. Jim, let's start with you. How bad was the winds when the squall went through?
Well, once again, Jeff, we were up around 50 miles an hour, but they fared a little bit worse down toward Cutler Ridge and also into Key Largo, where there were tornadoes spotted as a result of this squall line that has moved on through. And now, as you mentioned, there is for North Miami a tornado warning. So that is one of the byproducts, if you will, of these outer feeder bands, these first few feeder bands, and that could be tornadoes. We look behind us here at the causeway. We are, as we have been in Key Biscayne, looking back toward the city of Miami, and the causeway tonight pretty much very, very desolate, as many folks are just kind of taking heed to all the preparations being completed and now just kind of hanging out at home. And I'll tell you, the police have suggested that if you can, we would really appreciate that you stay off the roads tonight, because if something does happen with a tornado, or if we do get a severe squall that knocks down trees and power lines, they will be much, much quicker to react on what's going on. So no doubt we're getting ready for the worst of George as it begins to move in tonight, and by tomorrow we could be in the hurricane force winds here in Key Biscayne. What's happening on the other coast? Let's find out as we go to Naples with a live report from Bill Keneally. Bill?
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. So far, so good over here. Yes, we are in Naples, Florida. We are in the hurricane warning. To my right would be Bonita Beach. That's the northern extent of the hurricane warning, about 15 miles to my right. To my left starts the mandatory evacuation, starts about 10 blocks south of here. It does take in a lot of Collier County to the west and south of Highway 41. Once you get south of around Central Avenue, that is where there is a mandatory evacuation underway. The weather is still pretty good, though. We see some lightning off to our south and east periodically. But as I reference the trees behind me, there's not a whole lot of sway to the palm trees here. So if you've been procrastinating and you want to get out and you feel like you better get out, do it tonight. As Jim mentioned, there's some squally weather to our southeast. He's about 100 miles east of us, and I think the nasty weather will start rolling in here after midnight, so the weather should get downhill in a big hurry after that time. So right now, Jeff, we're in pretty good shape, so we'll be keeping tabs on this weather as it comes in quickly from the east later on. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Bill Keneally there in Naples, and Jim Cantore reporting all the way over from Key Biscayne on the east coast near Miami. Joining us now here in the Forecast Center is our hurricane expert, John Hope. And John, it's become increasingly more apparent that the Florida Keys may catch the brunt of this hurricane.
Jeff, the eye of this hurricane is getting stronger. It's headed, it seems to us, pretty much for the lower Keys.
All right.
Now, it's been a long time since the lower Keys have had a direct hit by a hurricane of this intensity, and one that may even be stronger by the time it gets there. And all traffic has been halted in and out of the Keys, so people who are there. But they need to realize there's going to be a significant storm surge there when this eye comes ashore, more than 5 feet, very likely above high tide. So if they're in one-story buildings, they might try to check with local law enforcement officials. I think they do have some buildings in the Keys designated as refuges of last resort. They're not shelters in the true sense of the word, but if you're in a one-story building, well, I'm afraid some of these keys are going to be washed over with water and heavy pounding waves.
Bad, potentially very bad, serious situation. Let's take a look at it on satellite one more time. And John, the center, pretty easily visible now. I guess we can pretty much call it an eye there. Here is South Florida. We've seen this convection, if you will, this darker orange wrap all the way around, a sign of intensification.
And this is headed right straight for the Keys, and it's going to be there early tomorrow, sometime in the morning, to be hurricane force winds before that. And on the radar now, you can certainly see, once this goes into motion, very plainly where the eye of the hurricane is. And we've been able to track that now for the last few hours, and it is moving steadily towards the northwest.
All right, so basically pretty much in that kind of a direction.
Pretty much in that direction.
All right, so again, the eye itself, but remember, a hurricane is not a point, so it's not just going to be the lower Keys, but there will be some bad weather, as we just saw up there in Miami, even skirting across parts of South Florida.
Some of the heaviest rain associated with the hurricane is beyond the radar range. It's over here in the eastern semicircle.
And here's a little bit more of a close-up here, again, with some of the names on here. Here's one band here, and we had another one move through Key West, so we're going to be seeing more of these bands move across South Florida before the actual eye gets there.
And after this gets past the Florida Keys, then it's going to move out in the Gulf, and I'm afraid we're going to have to deal with that up in the northern Gulf over the weekend.
So we are expecting another landfall after the Keys landfall, probably something farther up the coast.
Yes, we are.
All right, John Hope, our hurricane expert, and again, we'll be back to give you the very, very latest on Hurricane George. Thanks, John, for your expertise.
Of Africa with maximum sustained wind.
The first of the rain bands from Hurricane George began moving through the Florida Keys late this afternoon. And tonight, residents of South Florida are bracing as a rapidly intensifying Hurricane George approaches. Good evening. Welcome to this special edition of Weather Center. I'm Paul Emick. Now, this is quickly becoming a very dangerous situation for those who decided to ride out the storm in the Keys. For the absolute latest information, we're going to switch now to the Forecast Center with Jeff Morrow. Jeff?
All right, thanks, Paul. And indeed, we have the very latest information now in from the National Hurricane Center. This is the latest advisory. There have been some tweaks to some of the warnings, not the hurricane warning so much, but we have some new tropical storm warnings that we will pass those along to you in just a moment. But let's go ahead and give you the very latest coordinates, and this is as of the 11 p.m. advisory, 23.2 north, 79.6 west, or centers this hurricane about 165 miles southeast of Key West, Florida. Maximum sustained winds are up another 5 miles an hour, up to 90 miles an hour. Movement still pretty much the same, west-northwest at 14, and the central pressure is at 985 millibars, maybe just a little bit down again. Now, here are the hurricane warnings that are currently up from Longboat Key all the way around the south coast of Florida up the east coast to Deerfield Beach. And we do have some new tropical storm warnings. Okay, tropical storm warnings now in effect for the Florida East Coast from Deerfield Beach all the way up to Stewart. And a tropical storm warning is in effect for the Florida West Coast north of Longboat Key to Bayport. So that is really the change now. Those tropical storm warnings are issued north of Deerfield and north of Longboat Key as well. All right, joining me now here in the Forecast Center is Meteorology Supervisor Stu Ostro. And Stu, again, latest information confirming that we do have some more strengthening going on.
We do. This has been a very tenacious hurricane from the word go, and unfortunately it looks like a couple more chapters to be written, and they're not happy ones either.
All right, right now it appears the main threat area, still probably the Florida Keys, will catch the brunt of it, it looks like.
That's what it looks like, although we do want to pass along this report we just got from an automated reporting station in the Dade County waters, a bit offshore and at an exposed spot a bit above the water, but nonetheless it gusts to 67 knots, which is hurricane force. So those strong winds do extend out a pretty good distance from the center of circulation.
So even though the center itself may probably pass through the Keys, a lot of South Florida is going to get some pretty nasty weather overnight.
Right, across South Florida, folks ought not to let their guard down.
All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the satellite perspective of this hurricane. And Stu, ever since that center finally did make its way offshore as we expected, boy, the intensification of a lot of this darker red here indicating the eye wall, particularly the east eye wall, has really exploded.
It has. All these deep reds and oranges and yellows represent intense squalls, and we've seen some of them really wrapping around the center. And on radar, even though on satellite it doesn't look quite as impressive on here, on radar we do see a very well-defined eye of the hurricane.
All right, and speaking of the radar, we do have a Doppler radar. This is the long range here out of Key West, which is located right here in Miami. To get your bearings would be up here along the southeast coast of Florida. But again, the eye pretty well defined here. It looks like it might be elongating a bit, but that may be a temporary thing as well.
It may be temporary. It's still in the process of organizing and intensifying. We'd also point out that there's a lot of activity going on over here, a lot of heavy weather. It's just that it's a bit too far away from the radar for it to show up.
So as this gets closer to the radar site there in Key West, we'll get a much better representation of just how powerful this system is. Now here's a close-up, Stu, of the southern areas of Florida. This is a Doppler, and we've had a couple of these big, strong bands move through already, and that is what has caused even a couple of tornado warnings to come out.
And it's typical in some of the outer squalls to the northeast of the eye for a couple of tornadoes to spin up. We're going through the nighttime hours, so they'd be very tough to see and have much advance warning, but a couple of them could be out there yet tonight.
All right, and we actually have some video to show you that was shot earlier today in Duck Key, Florida, when one of the first squall bands moved on through. And indeed, it was extremely heavy rain and very gusty winds. In this particular band, there were winds gusting upwards of 50 to 55 miles per hour. As Stu just told you, with the latest band that was moving just offshore of the Florida Keys and on up along Dade County, there were reports of up to hurricane force winds. And again, the center is still well to the south of this area. Well, joining me now in two areas in South Florida are our live crews. One is Naples, Florida on the west coast, and the other at Key Biscayne, Florida, very near Miami on the east coast. Let's start with Key Biscayne and Jim Cantori. Jim, give us the latest there from South Florida.
Well, Jeff, I want to add a little something to what's going on in the Keys tonight. You mentioned the people that have evacuated down there, and there are still reports coming in tonight that perhaps as much as 10,000 of those people are sitting there in the Keys. And I'm telling you, if they're watching the Weather Channel and look at that satellite picture, I have a little bit of a nervous stomach tonight, no doubt about it, especially watching this hurricane intensify. So some big problems perhaps for the Keys, as this will be the first hit there since Hurricane Donna back there in 1950. But here in Dade County, Miami-Dade, as we look across Biscayne Bay and we look on the causeway tonight, I mean, we just haven't had much traffic. I mean, people are basically hunkered down and just ready to deal with this. A lot of wonderful pre-preparation work, and you got to give the folks a big hand here because I mean, there's no doubt the memories of Andrew made them prepare like it was going to be an Andrew. And you know, Jeff, before things are all said and done, this could be another strong storm like Andrew was. Maybe not for South Florida, but maybe for somebody, and that is something, if you live in the Gulf Coast tonight, you need to consider very, very seriously. Well, let's go ahead and take you onto the other coast, and we'll find out how things are going in Naples. Here's Bill Keneally with a live report. Bill?
All right, Jim, thanks a lot. Things were going fine until about 90 seconds ago. We got a little renegade shower passing through here. It's not much. It's not accompanied by any thunder or lightning, but nonetheless, this is a definite precursor of things to come, and probably late. We're talking about around the daybreak hour and beyond is when things will get rather dicey in the world of weather here in Naples, Florida. There is now a hurricane warning extended northward, as Jeff mentioned, all the way up to the Longboat Key area. This area is under a hurricane warning as well. 10 blocks south of here is where the mandated evacuation orders are out, and folks, if you have to get out there and you want to get to that shelter, you've been putting it off all evening, do it now. As I mentioned, as daybreak rolls around, things will go decidedly downhill. We will get squally weather, and we'll start getting those winds of tropical storm force, and they will pick up markedly as the morning wears on. So, Jeff, things are okay now outside of a little shower. Even some stars still out on occasion. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Bill Keneally there in Naples, Florida, and Jim Cantori reporting live all the way over on the east coast there at Key Biscayne. All right, back in the forecast center here, meteorology supervisor Stu, let's talk real briefly about where we think this hurricane is going to go once it heads into the Gulf.
across the Keys into the Gulf, the potential for a landfall upon the Gulf Coast a little bit later on as we head through the weekend. So folks there want to track the latest on this storm and look out for the potential of hurricane watches and eventually warnings a little bit later on.
All right, Stu Ostra.
So, what's your global priority? Try Global Priority Mail from the U.S. Postal Service.
You can also get reliable forecasts from the Weather Channel through this radio station. As Hurricane George treks towards southern Florida, we're working around the clock to keep you prepared. For the latest coverage, watch Weather Center on the hour and half hour.
Current affairs and classic drama. This October, pay-per-view delivers the hits.
Does this guy have a chance in hell? No.
Join John Travolta and Emma Thompson on the campaign trail to the presidency. Primary colors.
Seize him!
Leonardo DiCaprio stars in a classic tale of power and betrayal. The Man in the Iron Mask.
Wear it until you die in it!
Big stars, hit movies. Bring them home this October on pay-per-view.
Worried about traffic tie-ups on your way to work? Well, don't worry. Tune into New Jersey 101.5 FM radio. We've got traffic reports every 15 minutes around the clock. And how about the weather? Rain or shine, we've got the forecast. Tune into New Jersey 101.5 weather reports every 10 minutes, every hour, every day. And watch the New Jersey 101.5 morning show, weekdays from 6 to 10 a.m. right here on CN8, the Comcast network.
I think that people have a fascination with the weather, just like we do. And they want to get our insight into why the weather is doing what it's doing. We even show pictures.
Right now, it's your local forecast on the Weather Channel.
Storm Watch at the Weather Channel. I'm Paul Emick. Glad you're here. We need to talk a lot about the tropics. Let's begin this Storm Watch with our tropical update. We have 3 hurricanes to talk about and a tropical storm all in the Atlantic. Let's have a look at all of them. Of course, closest to home, first of all, we'll begin with a look at Hurricane George. Current position 165 miles southeast of Key West, Florida, with sustained winds around 90 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 14. So this thing is on the move and obviously affecting the Keys in way too strong of a fashion already. You can pretty much see the center of circulation now back over at least a bit of it over the water. Pretty broad center there. As it moves along, it's now back in a spot where it can intensify. Hurricanes and tropical systems often start to lose their punch when they run ashore. Now back over water, it's in a spot where it can continue to intensify, and that it has been doing. In addition, don't worry so much about where the center is. Worry about all the rain and all the incredible winds away from this thing. Still incredible wind coming into the Keys already, and some of the outer rain bands all associated with George are already on the move across the Keys, across Key West tonight, throughout the Keys. A lot of rain, a lot of wind. It's going to be a very, very bad situation overnight and into Friday as well. So what we'll do is we'll talk in a few moments, in case you are by any chance watching tonight from the Keys, about some shelter areas you can get to still. That's coming up at the top of the hour in Weather Center. But get ready for it across parts of Florida. It's going to be incredible in the southern parts of Florida. What about strike potential? Well, we could deal anything in that darkest red area there, indicating spots with the highest probability, including, of course, parts of South Florida and eventually all along the western coast of Florida and the portions of the Panhandle. Again, that's some of the areas we're looking at with the highest likelihood this could happen. In addition to George, which we'll talk more about at the top of the hour, we have Tropical Storm Karl. It's moving lately southeast around 9 miles an hour, expected to make more of an easterly turn eventually. It may strengthen a little bit further, though, still around 60 miles per hour, so not too far away from hurricane strength, but again, it's moving away from the U.S. shores as it should be continuing to move more of a turn toward the east in the next 24 hours. Hurricane Ivan as well. Look at it, 80 mile per hour sustained winds. It is currently moving on toward the north around 12 miles an hour. Begun to turn toward the north, should eventually move on northeast, then east, running into cooler water, cooler sea surface temperatures. Also a bit of northwesterly wind shear may work against this, becoming anything stronger to contend with. Also here's Hurricane Jeanne. Currently 105 miles per hour, moving west-northwest at 14. This motion should continue. Not expecting a lot of change, a bit of a trough to the west, kind of inhibiting its development, kind of shearing it a bit. But again, this motion is expected to continue, and it also could intensify. As if this weren't enough, more action across from the Cape Verde region. We'll discuss all the tropics and Weather Center next. Please stay tuned.
Folks in southern Florida, prepare for the potential impact of Hurricane George. We'll have continuous live updates plus the national forecast next on Weather Center.